Hi everybody, welcome back again for Air Canada 855 from Heathrow to Vancouver. We are holding short here on taxiway Bravo at hold point Oster to take off on runway 9 right. We have finished our before takeoff checklist. So the next checklist up is the after takeoff checklist. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. Air traffic control is not online today, but what we will do is pretend that they've told us to go to hold point November 10. That's that second left up there. So brakes released. Push up the throttles a bit. As I said in the last video, about 30% seems to be about what you have to do to get this thing rolling in P3D. And then pull it back. You want to try to keep the ground speed, again, that's there at the top of the navigation display. I want to try to keep the ground speed under 20 and under 10 in the turns. So link 53 there is where we're going to turn there on the left. There we go. You should see November 10. November 10's out there. Okay. So we're going to line up that second column before we start our turn. Again, this is a very long aircraft, so we want to make sure that we don't overshoot, but also don't undershoot our taxi and our turns. Actually, might have gone a little bit over there, but not too bad. Okay, so there we can see is November 10. That's the hold short point for runway 9 right. So we'll come up to there and set our brakes. Set our parking brakes while I briefly talk about takeoff procedures. Okay. Parking brakes are set. Okay, so really quick, let's talk about takeoff procedures. So down here on the throttles, there are a couple switches that you should probably be aware of. First are okay, so these are the thrust levers, the throttles right there. Those are our reversers right there. That right there, these paddles are the takeoff go-around or toga paddles. That's what puts the aircraft essentially in maximum throttle mode. That's what we use for, as the name implies, both taking off and if we need to go around. Over here, this little black button, that's the auto throttle disconnect button. You can use the switches that are up on the mode control panel right there, but I don't recommend it unless you have to, because even if you disconnect the auto throttles, they're actually still engaged in the background, so if your speed got too low, depending on the mode you're in, they'll automatically come up to provide you with more power. Obviously, the Asiana crash in San Francisco, they weren't quite paying attention to that. They were in what's called a flight level change trap, but that's something for another lesson. So what we're going to do when we take off is we're going to advance our throttles to about 50%, and one way to determine that is you take a look at this little N1 line right there, and what you want to do is line that up just about with the top of the EGT arc there for engine number 2. That'll put you at about 50%, and what we'll do is we'll wait for the engines to stabilize, so we'll make sure that they're both coming up to speed at the same time, and then we're going to hit that toga button. That will advance the throttles to our takeoff power setting, which is 104.1 today. That'll advance the throttles to the takeoff setting. At the same time, my physical throttles on my control stand here, I'm going to push them all the way forward too. Depending on how you have both prepared and your PMDG aircraft configured, it is possible that once the throttles advance all the way in the simulator, if your throttles on your yoke are all the way back, the throttles will actually retard back. So it's a good idea just to, when you're doing takeoff, bring it up to 50%, toga, push your throttles forward. And that's what we're going to do here. Now, our V1 today is 147. So what does that mean? Well, that is our go-no speed, go-no-go speed, which means that's the point where we're going to, no matter what happens, we're going to go into the air at that point. So what I do is and I think most commercial operators work this way, I keep my hands on the throttles until V1. Because up until V1, if we needed to, I could pull the throttles all the way back, our auto brakes will engage, in their RTO mode, rejected takeoff. But after V1, we are going into the air. So at V1, I actually physically move my hands off the throttle. And then at that point, we'll pitch up to about 8 degrees until we're sure that we're not going to strike our tail, and then pitch up to about 15 degrees or so, and climb out at our V2 speed, which is 169. That basically covers our takeoff procedure. So with that, let's see, the approach end is clear, and the departure end is clear, so let's put our landing lights on, runway turnoff lights on, strobe light on, and taxi light off. And let's enter runway 9 right. So we should hear our runway alert and advisory system, our RAS system, advising us that we're entering or approaching runway 9 right. We're also going to visually confirm that out there by looking at the runway numbers. Again, not as big of a deal in the simulator, but you want to make sure that you are on the correct runway.
09 right.
And there it said that we're approaching 09 right. That's good.
Approaching 09 right.
Okay, and runway 9 right is identified. Start our turn. A little bit of extra throttle to get around the turn here.
On runway 09 right.
And then you hear the RAS say that we're on runway 09 right. Let's get ourselves straightened out. There we go. Okay, we're on runway 9 right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll call takeoff. I'm going to start my clock and advance my throttles and then hit toga. So here we go. Takeoff. 50% N1. That's what we're targeting. Again, line it up at the top of that EGT gauge. That looks good. Toga. You can see toga enunciated here on the PFD. So we're in thrust ref, which is our maximum thrust. Toga for our lateral navigation. Toga for our VNAV navigation, vertical navigation. 100 knots. Here comes V1, at which point my hands are off the throttles.
V1.
And rotate. Positive rate, gear up. And we're a little fast, so let's pitch up. And we're flying a track of 051. And we're in our climb thrust, so we're going to start to accelerate, so flaps to 5. As we pass that flaps 5 bug, we'll go flaps 1. And as we pass the flaps 1 bug, we'll go flaps up. Flaps up. You can see our magenta target there for speed has now moved up to the 250 knot point, which is our initial climb out speed. A little bit of turbulence here on the climb out. Okay, so there we are at 250. Let's raise our pitch to, there's our pitch. Slow us down a little bit. Right turn now to hit the, what was it? 072 radial. And 1,000 to go. Again, we're climbing out to 6,000 here. And speed VNAV path is enunciated on the PFD. Not the best level out I've had, but it'll do. Okay, so there's 6,000 feet, 250 knots, and we're coming up on our left turn here momentarily. There's our left turn. I'm going to go ahead and turn the autopilot on here, just because I'm trying to talk and do multiple things at once. So, we are level at 6,000 feet. We are on our intercept. There we go. On our intercept to the big and 20. We need to cross that at or above 5,000, which we already are. And at this point, we're going to assume that air traffic control has cleared us up to flight level 140. Let's go 140 on the altitude window. Now, because we have entered, the last commanded position was 6,000, and 6,000 is what we're supposed to cross Buzzad at. If we're not actually going to climb because it knows that there's a speed or a restriction. But if we press this altitude button, that will actually... oh, that's right. It deletes the first restriction, so you can see the magenta one there is the next restriction. So if we hit it once more, it deletes the next one, hit it once more. There we go. All of our altitude restrictions are gone, and we should start our climb. Here we go. Go ahead and turn our scale here a little larger. And we're entering some clouds. I'm going to go ahead and get the weather on my side. So we're in thrust ref VNAV speed. We passed through 6,500 feet. Again, that was our transition. So we'll hit our standard button. And we are standard, standard, and standard. Okay. As we pass through 10,000 feet, a couple things are going to happen. First off, the nose should pitch down a bit for us because it's going to accelerate to our cruise climb speed of 320 knots, our economy climb speed. 320 knots or Mach 0.831, depending on what altitude we're at. So that'll initially be an indicated airspeed of 320 knots, and as we climb higher and the Mach number increases, we will start tracking at Mach 0.831. Second, as we're just about to pass through 10,000 feet, is I will turn our landing lights off. So, landing lights off. Runway turn-off lights off. Leave the strobe light on. The strobe light typically stays on throughout the flight. And we are passing through 10,000 feet. We can see that we're accelerating here. The little green arrow there, that indicates what our speed will be in 10 seconds at our current rate of acceleration. So in 10 seconds it'll be at 270 knots. And then now, another 10 seconds, we should be at 280 knots. You can see the airspeed increasing and decreasing. That's a little bit of turbulence here on our climb out. Let's go ahead and run our after takeoff checklist. So, as I mentioned in video 2, I believe it was, the aircraft will detect the position of things like flaps, gear, auto brakes, things like that. So you can see that landing gear is up, flaps are up, and our after takeoff checklist is done. Okay, so we are tracking to Buzzad. We're currently cleared to flight level 340. Let's say that at this point, air traffic control clears us up to, let's say, flight level 240. Now, we don't need to hit this altitude button here. Why? Well, first of all, we're still in our climb, so we don't have to tell it to pay attention to a new altitude. It'll just follow us up to this altitude regardless. Second, there are no restrictions here along our route. So here, as we're looking at our next waypoint of Buzzad at a heading of 331 degrees, it's 7 nautical miles away from us. We're going to fly there at 320 knots, and we're expected to cross it at flight level 162. That small print indicates that it's a prediction. Any sort of large print, like we saw earlier with like 6,000 in Buzzad, that indicates that it's a restriction. So a restriction versus a prediction. Okay. I've flown this route a couple times. It's fairly common once we get to Buzzad for air traffic control, provided that there's not a whole lot of traffic to give us direct REMSI. Let's see if we can find where REMSI is here. Oops, too much. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so there's Buzzad. Darrington, is that what that is? Hotel Oscar November. Look at our plan mode here. Zoom in. So, just one thing to note here. I'm actually looking at the first officer's CDU, and you'll know if you put the map into plan mode, you should be able to step through the various waypoints. Well, I'm using the first officer's CDU. His wants to control the navigation display over here, so let's pull up the captain's CDU. There we go. So now we can step through our waypoints. So there's a Hotel Oscar November, Whiskey Alpha Lima, Gun2, Bilbo, Tupum, and then REMSI. So let's assume they're giving us direct REMSI, so that's going to allow us to cut off some points of our legs here. What we're going to do is we're going to use what's called down selecting and up selecting. I think I used this earlier when I was selecting our GPS position. So we can page down to REMSI, so we're on page 2. If we select line 2 left, that puts REMSI down in the scratch pad. Hit our previous page, and up select REMSI to line 1 left. Confirm our route. And hit execute. And now we're in LNAV mode, so the plane will automatically bank to capture that route direct to REMSI. And at this point, we'll say air traffic control has given us clearance to climb all the way up to flight level 340, which is our initial cruising altitude. So we'll set 340 in the altitude window. Another thing we should do here is back up our current heading and our predicted heading by actually dialing that in on our heading select window. So let's go back to heading mode. And heading 320. Okay. So I mentioned both track and heading earlier. Actually, I think I did it in the last video. So you'll notice on the navigation display, it's displaying track up. So, oops, there we go. It's displaying track up. So we are on a track of 319 degrees. You can see the track we're supposed to fly to REMSI is 320, so that's about right. Our heading is actually off to the left here a little bit, and that's because we have a wind off of our left nose at about 41 knots. That's on the navigation display. On the PFD, the primary flight display, that displays heading up. So this shows we are actually pointing at a heading of 314, and we're tracking about 320. So just a little bit of information that you should know. One of the reasons why it's helpful to keep your heading bug aligned is just the other day I was flying out of London on a departure similar to this, and they said Air Canada 855, fly heading 350. Well, before, if I had my heading bug, way over at 090, or whatever our departure heading was, I would have to scroll this all the way around, and it was a busy air traffic control environment, would have taken a lot of time to do, and might have frustrated the controller a bit. What I was able to do here, though, is because I already had my current heading dialed in, all I had to do was just roll this up to 350 and then hit heading select. You see our annunciator panel changes from LNAV to heading select, so we're now turning to the right off of our planned route. You'll get this a lot when you're flying online because when there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of airports, there tends to be a lot of vectors that have to take place as you're flying around. The good news is, though, once you get up to cruise altitude, there tends not to be a whole lot of changes, and that's the point where you can, there's a couple things you can do. I know a lot of people, and I've done this as well, just step away from the cockpit for a while. And that's fine, provided you're not online. If you are online, you should give the controller a call and say, hey, Air Canada 855 Heavy is going to step away for about 10 minutes. And typically they're fine with that. They'll just ask you to report when you're back. What you should not do is disconnect completely. And then, or what you should not do is just step away completely and remain connected, because if air traffic control tries to talk to you and they can't, you will get dinged, and it's not a pleasant experience. I've only had it happen to me once, maybe twice over the past 12 years. Okay, so let's say that air traffic control gives us direct REMSI once again, so we'll select REMSI, hit exec, and then engage LNAV. And here we're going to start our turn back to REMSI. So, pretty smooth departure. As I said, there are some techniques you can use for the kind of best practices. Like I said, keeping your hands on the throttles, pushing the throttles all the way forward when you go to toga, just to make sure that because of your physical hardware throttle position, they don't reduce during your takeoff roll. It's a very bad time for that to happen. Let's see, what else? Make sure you try to keep your speed and your turns on the ground underneath 10 knots. As I said, it's pretty easy to sprint the tire. So no real gear special. Other than that, this is the real easy part of the flight as we finish our climb out and as we cruise. The only things we're really going to pay attention here, well, there's a lot of things you should pay attention to, but for our purposes today, the only things we're going to pay attention to are to make sure that we climb at our appropriate points. So we are climbing to an initial cruise altitude of flight level 340. As we cross the Atlantic, what we're going to do is we will step climb at certain points. Step climb means about what it sounds like. We're going to step up to a higher cruise altitude as we go along. If I look at my legs page, you can see that on page 1 here, we are going to stay at flight level 340. Same thing when we get to 6730 north, we're going to stay at 340. However, when we pass point 7040 north, we're going to climb up to flight level 360, and that's because we'll have burned off enough fuel that it's a more optimum altitude for us to fly at. How do we know that? Well, one of the ways to look at it is to go to our VNAV page. So, by default, when you press VNAV, it puts it in the mode that is currently active. So you can say active. You see how it says active econ climb? We're in the active economy climb mode. If we wanted to climb at a different speed, again, right now we're at targeting Mach 0.831. If for some reason we had to climb at Mach 0.82, you can see there it says modified economy climb. Hit execute. And now it says active Mach 0.82 climb. So we are not in our economy climb anymore. We're not getting the actual best fuel economy. We are climbing at a specific speed. If we want to go back to our economy climb, you can see this little econ indication here at 5 left. Hit econ, hit execute, and we're back to our active economy climb. If I go to our next page, though, this will show our cruise page. Now, we have not hit our cruise level yet. We're about 2,000 feet to go. But our cruising altitude is going to be flight level 340 at 0.831 Mach. And then you can see it says step 2, flight level 360 at 1319 Zulu, which is 1,355 miles away. And then down here at the bottom, you can see that right now our optimum altitude is actually 33,300 feet. Our maximum altitude is 34,800 feet, and our recommended altitude is flight level 320. But we're actually going to climb up, due to air traffic control, we're going to climb up to flight level 340 for our initial climb. You can set different step climb increments. So for instance, you could say, I only want to step at 4,000 foot increments. So you can see if that's the case, here we're coming up on 1,000 to go. If that's the case, we're not going to climb until 3,100 miles away, so 1659, so it's not quite some time. I just delete this? I don't remember. There we go. RVSM, that's the reversed vertical separation minima that gets used in a lot of busy airspaces these days. It actually reduces the step climb altitude to about 2,000 feet. So we can go from flight level 340 to flight level 360. Sync up our heading bug here. Go. And we are in speed VNAV path. What this means is that the auto throttles will maintain our speed. So they'll be at the correct N1 setting. You can see them adjusting here. Correct N1 setting to keep us around 0.831 Mach. And then VNAV path means that the elevators on the back of the plane will move to make sure we remain on our vertical path, which is just maintaining 34,000 feet. So VNAVs, the elevators are maintaining altitude, and the throttles are maintaining speed. Hit our cruising altitude, go ahead and turn the seatbelt sign off. And that ends this lesson. When we come back, we'll cover a couple things that we will take care of in the cruise, as well as I'll walk you through some of the systems here. One of the first ones we'll probably take a look at is the fuel system, because we burn from the center tank outwards. So there's 9,300 kilograms in the center tank, 31,000 kilograms in each the left and the right tanks. So when it comes time for that center tank to empty out, we'll go through that process, but that's for the next lesson. So for now, thanks for watching, and we will see you later on in the cruise.